So full disclosure, this isn't really going to be a proper review of the series, not only because I don't really agree with reviewing series until they're completely finished. I mean, it's like reviewing a book after only reading a few chapters. It makes no sense. But this is more an exercise I'm doing with myself to decide if I even want to continue with it. Because you know me, don't watch things you expect to disappoint you. But I can't really decide how I feel about this series. Even after 2 episodes, I still really don't know my stance on it. So yeah, tune in to see whether or not I'm going to continue with it, because at this point, I don't even know. So we open with a Star Wars crawl, and it's fine. It's reasonably concise in telling you what's going on. And I want to say, in terms of technical filmmaking elements, score, sound design, set design, cinematography, all of that, amazing. Too bad it's not in service to a better show. And we're introduced to our primary character, Ahsoka, and she's wandering through some ruins, and we watch her very, very slowly complete a puzzle. And it's not the fun kind of mystery show puzzle that gives you enough clues as a viewer to maybe work out the answer alongside the character. No, it's just we watch Ahsoka turn the dial, and then we watch her walk towards the next dial, and then turn the dial, and then walk towards the next dial. And you guessed it, she turns the dial. This goes on for a good few minutes. There's no atmosphere to it. Some slow scenes to allow everything to sink in is good, but there's nothing to sink in here. And it's not like Indiana Jones, well, apologies, I'm not an Indiana Jones fan, do correct me if I get things wrong, but it's not like that kind of thing where we're watching Indiana Jones in the ruins or the tombs with the booby traps and everything, watching him work it out in real time, and through filmic language we can see how his mind is working and everything, and then he sees the artifact and he realizes he has to get a counterbalance of weight in order to trick the booby trap. It's not like that. We are literally just watching her turn dials, look at something, walk around, turn dials. It's a whole scene of nothing. Luckily, though, it is followed by a pretty decent lightsaber fight, which kind of puts you in mind of the prequels fight. We haven't actually seen a good live-action lightsaber fight in a very, very long time. So props to this. It's short but sweet. It is pretty creative. It has a lot of tongue-in-cheek elements, like Ahsoka jumping down through the hole and then cutting a hole through the ceiling in order to let the droids fall, and it's fun. It's a bit of fun. Then the droids decide to self-destruct, but they give Ahsoka a good, I'm not kidding, 15 seconds. You know why bombs have timers on them? It's so the fleshy humans that set the bombs have the time to escape. This is not only a droid, this is a suicide bomb droid. Why is this a feature? Why is there a time? Do you know who this timer is helping? The person you are trying to blow up is who it's helping.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be a cell-shattering kaboom!
I mean, it's not even like a flesh and blood human suicide bomber is going to walk in and go 10, 9, 8, 7. So Ahsoka escapes, obviously, and she goes to Hera, tells her she's got the map. They talk about Ezra, they talk about Sabine, and a pro for this show is that I don't really think you need to have seen Rebels to understand what's going on. But on the flip side to that, I do believe you need to have seen Rebels to care what's going on. So Ahsoka agrees to go find Sabine, and we cut to the planet she's living on.
People of Jerusalem, Rome is your friend.
Sorry, I don't know why that popped into my head, it just did. As you can probably tell, this video is not scripted. Maybe I should have that as like a visual cue, like if the video is scripted, I have T, if the video is not scripted, I have something else. Yeah, tell me if you think that should be a feature going forward. So they basically do an aerial moment with Sabine where she is not at the place she was supposed to be headlining, and this is a thing, like, in order to show that the character we're talking about is above politics and it's not all about the empty platitudes to the masses and she's too broody or full of pain or too busy doing something better with her time in order to deal with all this, you know, fancy schmancy politics talking and schmoozing and everything. Seen it. This is a very, very played out way to show that your character isn't really fitting in with their surroundings. I have very limited experience with the show Rebels. I have a decent understanding of who all the characters are, and I know the basic plot. I've seen a couple of episodes, but really I didn't really know very much. But my friend did watch the show, and I did watch a couple of episodes with him, and when I was getting to grips with who all these characters are, I used to just call Sabine Hot Topic Mando, and this scene just really, really justifies that name.
All right, look, Commander, I have my orders. I'm gonna need you to pull over.
Well, here's a new order. Get lost.
Now, I feel like being raised by Mandalorians, that would be the kind of culture where your parents would beat you for coming up with a comeback that lame. Yes, as Mandalorians, we beat our children. That's how we love them. It's not nearly enough. And before you ask, yes, I did start before you got here. This is another franchise I have limited experience of, but do correct me if I get anything wrong here. But you know that Yu-Gi-Oh spin-off, you know, the one with the motorbikes? DX or something? I'm sure you're screaming at the screen right now. But yeah, the one with the motorbikes, right? I think I vaguely remember that if you get caught speeding in that universe, the police chase you and they challenge you to a card game, and if you win the card game, they let you go. Like, I don't even know if that's true, but that's what this put me in mind of. Like, she's not where she's supposed to be. She looks like she's probably speeding, and the authorities are after her, but, you know, she does such sick moves that the authorities are looking at her with this little smile like, yeah, you're all right, on you go. So yeah, that's Sabine. And when we go into her home, we get another look of exactly the type of personality she is, but she has a space kitty. Oh, I want to pet the space kitty.
He does not have a script. This is what happened.
Ahsoka turns up, and we get one of the first interesting things about this show, in that there is some real tension and history between them, and it isn't really spoon-fed to us exactly what happened. We can kind of infer. And I really, really want to learn more about this, and I really hope they haven't just abandoned/resolved it, because I'll get to that in the next episode. But anyway, that is good. But Rosario Dawson, I've never really rated Rosario Dawson that much as an actress, but in this case especially, I have no idea why she was picked for Ahsoka. And the funny thing is, my first experience of this character was The Mandalorian. I came into Star Wars through The Mandalorian, and even then I didn't have much connection to this very somber, serious Ronin type character. Just she was a pretty much a nothing character. And especially after going back and watching Clone Wars to see Ahsoka, sparky, full of life, full of character Ahsoka, like even in Rebels where she was supposed to be more somber and serious, she didn't sound this dead.
Then you know what I want. I won't give you that choice.
So yeah, no idea why she was chosen, but regardless, This is where the really contrived storytelling comes about. There's this map, and Ahsoka has to get the map, but she can't read the map. So she goes to Sabine to get her to read the map, and Sabine wants to take the map to her own place. Ahsoka says no, but Sabine takes the map, and then Sabine loses the map, so the bad guys have the map now, and Ahsoka has to go get the map. It's just chasing this object around. There's no actual real plot happening right now, but I will give them this. This is the establishing episode, and it does do a decent job of establishing who our characters are, where they are geographically, where they are in their lives, and where they are in their relationships with each other. That's okay. So yeah, the bad guys come, and I haven't talked about the bad guys, but there's really nothing to say about them. But yeah, the bad guys come to Sabine's house, they take the map, she fights them, they give her what at this point amounts to the Star Wars equivalent of a paper cut.
6 hours later.
I'm fine.
And that's where episode 1 ends. So Ahsoka goes back to Sabine's place, and with the help of Space Kitty, finds another droid, which she then decapitates and brings back to Sabine, and then we see a really amazing display of Sabine's wonderful technical skills and intelligence.
They have several built-in backup systems. If you get the power levels right, you can recover the droid's memory.
We can find out what the droid was programmed to do and where it came from by looking at its memory? Genius. Freaking genius. This is a real gripe of mine. And it's not just Star Wars and sci-fi this happens in. It really, really happens a lot in superhero movies. Tech systems in sci-fi and superhero films are kind of like magic systems in fantasy, right? It doesn't really matter if what you're saying is factual or makes any sense in the real world, but there does have to be a certain logical through line that you have set up that your audience can then follow. But they just do this thing where they say, oh, I'll put this wire in here, and I'll put that hologram there, and I've done it. Eureka! I've done it! It's like that scene in Endgame where Shuri's trying to fix Vision, and she's like, did you do the thing? And they're looking at each other like, yeah, we didn't do the thing. How could we have not thought to do the thing? God, Shuri is so fucking smart. How did she know how to do the thing? I'm fixing it right now. Did you reverse the polarity? Yes, I did reverse the polarity. You all know what happens when we don't reverse the polarity. Yes, we all know what happens when you don't reverse the polarity. I did it. So there's that. And then Hera gives Sabine a pep talk.
You did good.
No, she did not do good. She did something that she was explicitly told not to do, and through that action, the bad thing happened, and even through her lackluster fighting skills, she let McBad Guy get away with the MacGuffin, so yeah, she did not do good. There is no reason to be giving her a pep talk here. Maybe there's reason to give her a pep talk, but not praise. This is not a praiseworthy thing she did. And Ahsoka's reaction to Sabine, again, this goes into what I just said about Ahsoka's character. This is not two headstrong people just butting heads against each other. No, this is the standard stoic master, headstrong apprentice archetype with not nearly enough of the personality to make it interesting or fun. This is not the way these two characters should be interacting. This is definitely not the way Ahsoka should be interacting with anybody, but I've already gone through that. So Hera and Ahsoka go to a facility that was confiscated from the bad guy, and we get some interesting or semi-interesting talk about how the transition from Empire to Republic is no easy, streamless thing. And we are told that, yeah, most people just want jobs. Yeah, it's as long as they have jobs that they can feed their families with, they don't really care. Empire, Republic, and everything. That was good. Kind of ruin it by the end of the episode, but again, let's just go through what happens. They find that something fishy's going on, but when they try and get the confidential documents. Where the hell is my wine? Right. The confidential documents, and yeah, not airplane. This is too late in the day. One of the ships takes off without proper authorization, and they get a surprise attack, which may as well have been him standing up and yelling "Surprise!" And Hera chases the ship and puts a tracker on it, and Ahsoka again fights another bad guy, and then the people are arrested. And this is where they kind of ruin the interesting things they were setting up before, because in The Mandalorian, they did some really, really interesting stuff with the idea of why people would support the Empire.
The Empire improves every system it touches, judged by any metric. Safety, prosperity, trade, opportunity, peace. Is the world more peaceful since the revolution?
And especially in episode 1 of season 2, where the small town in Tatooine is celebrating the fall of the Empire without fully realizing the fact that the Empire was a large monster keeping away smaller monsters, and they are actually worse off in the power vacuum because people are just gonna come in and take whatever they want. But they just dilute those ideas down to...
It's not loyalty. It's greed.
Not that greed doesn't play a part. It plays a very, very, very substantial part. But yeah, they just say, oh, why? Why would someone support the Empire? Greed. And we all know The Mandalorian has a lot of problems with its writing, but it was more subtle than this in bringing up its ideas. It was fairly concerned, at least in a lot of episodes of the show, how the fall of the Empire affects the people on the ground. This just seems to say, no, it's greed. Yeah, not all these small-time dock workers just trying to feed their families that you mentioned before. No, it's greed. Fine. Now, I know a lot of old-school Star Wars fans have really taken issue with them diluting the very simple good versus evil thing that was a real linchpin of Star Wars, and I am not knocking that. Simple stories are some of the most enduring stories we have are the simple ones. So that is not to say that a story being simply black and white good versus evil makes it less worthy or less important or less well written or anything like that. But with a long running franchise, that kind of simple black and white view of the world, it cannot sustain a long running franchise. It can sustain a movie, a TV series, even a trilogy, but an entire franchise can't just work on that very simple good versus evil morality. You have to add shades of grey. That's what George was doing with the prequels. Those were very, very interested in how the bureaucracy, the messy grey nature of how our society just basically functions is a way that a lot of people can become dark. So yeah, I don't agree with people who say that the muddying of the waters when it comes to the morality of Star Wars was a mistake, because I know that it couldn't have survived this long. Star Wars, it couldn't have been sustained on that simple view of morality. But then there are people who just do not know how to do it, and these are the kind of people who just basically should have stuck to this guy is good, this guy is bad, end of story. So Sabine decides to don her armor, and she goes through a wee mini emotional arc here, so that does make sense. But Ahsoka, the last time she spoke to Sabine, she was like this.
No. You've done enough.
And now she's like this.
Take us out, Padawan.
What exactly made Ahsoka change her mind here? And this is what I was saying before. I really, really, really hope that they just do not just drop this. It's like, okay, everything's fine between us now, because they did not earn that. Not to mention, that's the most interesting part of the show, in my opinion. Right, time to talk about Ahsoka's character in general. And I know a lot of people have said that Anakin shouldn't have had a Padawan in Revenge of the Sith because they didn't talk about her. But I maintain that considering the way he lost her, they wouldn't have talked about her. I am fully convinced that considering what happened, Ahsoka would have been a no-go topic for Anakin, and I am also convinced that Obi-Wan would be very cognizant of the fact that considering the part he played in this, he would not want to remind Anakin of that, especially when he's asking him to do shit like this.
You're asking me to do something against the Jedi Code. Against the Republic, against a mentor and a friend. That's what's out of place here.
So yeah, totally believe that her being mentioned, especially when they are too busy trying to end the war at this point, yep, her not being brought up, I don't believe it's an issue. But the other point is that they say Anakin should never have been given a Padawan. This was a stupid decision. He is too attached to people. And so, like, yeah, giving him a child, yeah, they give the guy who is super attached and super afraid of losing people, give him a kid. That should help things.
You know, something makes me think this was your idea from the start.
But this really, really just backs up my stance that the Jedi can't emotion. And I'm sorry, if you want to argue with me on that, I'm going to have to set you some homework, because I've already gone through 2 hours and 40 minutes about why the Jedi are so bad at this and why them making these kind of decisions makes a lot of sense considering their moral stance and their ideas on relationships and how they function. Because if you look at it from the Jedi's point of view, and even to an extent your own, yeah, having a child is the ultimate exercise in letting go. You have the child, you feed, you clothe, you provide for, you educate the child, and when they're ready, it's time for you to let them go and make their own way into the world. What the Jedi don't understand is that parenting never stops, and it shouldn't stop. These relationships shouldn't be severed. So yeah, but if you look at it from the Jedi's point of view, yeah, teaching him this very valuable lesson about letting go made sense. And God, if I hear like one more person talking about, oh, it's a difference between love and attachment, and I'm like, yeah, these are the kind of people who believe that taking wanted children away from loving families is in any way, with any excuse, okay. And their whole attachment thing, fine, if you are an adult and you want to detach yourself, then yeah, that's your freaking business. But yeah, when I was researching that Jedi video, my friend who studied psychology and she lives in Korea, she sent me these Korean studies about Korean children who had been raised in institutions, and yet they were fed, they were clothed, they were kept warm, they were educated, but they weren't loved, they weren't held, they had no attachments to people. And we know that detaching yourself from children is very, very freaking dangerous. It is emotional abuse, and I still can't imagine any healthy grown adult who knows anything continually freaking defending this. I don't get it. Okay, that was off topic. Back to Ahsoka, because Padme was what finally pushed Anakin over the edge into the dark side, and his fear of losing her and his child, which turned out to be children, etc., etc. But a lot of people understandably complained that it felt very abrupt. Now, you can retrospectively justify, oh, this happened and this happened, and I think a lot of people do ignore that in the Clone Wars there was some really, really good and subtle setup. Of course, we had this.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals.
And then, on the more subtle end, we had this.
The trouble is that people don't always agree.
Well, then they should be made to.
And again, with Anakin mistrusting and growing distant from the Jedi in Revenge of the Sith, we had this.
Why are you asking this of me?
The Council is asking you.
But there's a difference between, yes, the reasons being there and it feeling abrupt to an audience, because Anakin goes from, you're on the dark side, I would very much like to kill you too. I will do anything you say, including slaughtering children. Yes, Padme was that final push, but Ahsoka should have been the perfect tool to fix this problem, and she very nearly was, especially considering the way Anakin lost her. This should have cemented Anakin's growing mistrust and distance from the Jedi and from Obi-Wan in particular. But there is a deleted scene, which is deleted, I know, but if you look at it, you can see kind of where the writers were going. And in this deleted scene, they kind of frame it like both Obi-Wan and Anakin see it as Ahsoka's failure as a Jedi, rather than the Jedi having failed Ahsoka.
I still can't understand how she could have left the Order. It was a surprise decision to all of us. It was wrong.
I'm shocked to my very core.
She made the decision, Anakin. Well, what choice did we give her? I will grant you mistakes were made, but she chose to leave. Part of the Jedi way is not letting emotion cloud your better judgment. And that's precisely what Ahsoka did.
This should have been the point where Obi-Wan believed this, but Anakin started to see how toxic and wrong and mismanaged the Jedi were, how they had so fully detached themselves from everything that they couldn't freaking see this, and that cost him his Padawan. That should have been not only what this scene was, but it should have been included. It should have been a very important part of Anakin's arc, but it just wasn't.
How would you feel if I turned into a major disappointment? How well would you sleep knowing I failed you?
And I watched a video by another small YouTuber called Sound Engraver, and she talked about Ahsoka. That's partially why I wanted to make this video. And she also talked about Siege of Mandalore as well, which I kind of 65-70% agree with, but I'll link her stuff below. Definitely do check it out. And she made a really, really good point that though Ahsoka, it was great to have her in the Siege of Mandalore, she should not have had contact with Obi-Wan and Anakin, because that just completely destroys that arc of Anakin's, because him getting that kind of sweet moment of closure with her, like him looking round at her, giving her the lightsabers and looking at her like a proud older brother mere hours before he would do this. And then this. Again, it doesn't logically ruin what Anakin supposedly was feeling towards the Jedi, but it just kind of emotionally stunts that arc. It shouldn't have happened. And she also came up with this really good idea in the sense that you could still have it pretty much the same, but Ahsoka has no contact with the Jedi. Like, she hears that Maul is after Obi-Wan, and even after everything that's happened, she still loves Obi-Wan, so she goes to try and capture Maul to stop him from hurting her master's master, and she meets Bo-Katan, and it isn't just like, oh yes, like we gotta help the Mandalorians, like helping the Mandalorians is the most important thing right now, but Bo-Katan wants Maul gone, Ahsoka wants Maul gone, they have their separate reasons for it, but they work together because they have a common goal, and through that, trust and friendship could develop much more naturally. And then you could basically have the Siege of Mandalore almost exactly the same. So yeah, that's really good. Again, watch that video. It's a really good video. But yeah, it just completely ruins Anakin's character arc. Because red hot take incoming, Anakin was a better character in the prequels than he was in Clone Wars. I'm sorry, he just was. But yeah, that is a separate video. That is, put a pin in that, put it on the list. Because I know they did try to give Anakin a little bit more of that motivation, a bit of that grooming, like showing how he was groomed by Palpatine and everything like that, and to show his growing mistrust to the Jedi. I know they did try, but it just simply wasn't enough. And again, that is where I believe the show suffers from being an anthology series. When you're watching it week by week, then you can kind of just get sucked into that specific arc and everything interesting that's happening within it, but the wider story suffers so much from that. And Of course, we all know Dave Filoni's attitude towards canon and continuity. He doesn't want to be put into a box, but again, that's a topic for another time. And I do plan to do a video at some point in the future going through what I believe to be the dumbest Clone Wars arc. And I bet you won't be able to tell me what it is because nobody talks about it. It's so dumb. It is so freaking dumb, but nobody says anything about it. I don't think anybody actually realizes just how dumb it is. So please comment below if you can guess which arc it is, then I will feature your comment when I do that video because it just, oh god, it's so dumb. But yeah, back to Ahsoka. Many more people than me have said that Ahsoka should not be here. We should not be watching this. Her purpose within the Star Wars universe should have been fulfilled. She was there to provide more of Anakin's fall to the dark side. And even though she was her own character, she went on her own journey, she had this and that, and she was the character the audience grew up with. The show was growing as its audience were growing, and she was the character that exemplified that. The audience were meant to grow with her. But her main purpose in the wider Star Wars universe was Anakin's fall to the dark side. That should have been what she was. That should have been the end of her. And so the last time we saw her should have been the last time Anakin saw her walking down the steps of the Jedi Temple. Her being in the Siege of Mandalore could have been cool, but like I said before, she shouldn't have had any contact with any Jedi, but especially not Anakin. And even though I do think her appearance in Rebels was pushing it too far, I think a great ending for her and a great part again of really solidifying there's nothing left of Anakin, at least for Clone Wars fans, would have been Ahsoka dying at the hands of her master. I think that's what should have happened. I think that's as far as it should have been taken. But Ahsoka's narrative purpose in the Star Wars universe has been fulfilled. Why is she still here? Like, Jesus Christ, Dave, pull the life support. She is dying. Wouldn't you have preferred that she had a dignified and heroic death or exit a long time ago rather than subjecting her to the slow, painful death that she's currently going through? Yeah, anyway. Back to the original question of the video. Will I be continuing with this series? Yes, I am mildly interested in Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship. I do want to see Hayden Christensen get another crack at playing Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker because they really did not give him his due in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. By God, did they mess that up. So yeah, currently that's enough for me to continue. And if I have anything else to say about it, I'll make another video. But if I don't, if it just continues to be meh, if I have really nothing to say other than this was fine, this wasn't so great, this was alright, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, then I'll just leave it be because it's not worth the time. I've pretty much gotten all my thoughts out about the character in general in this video, what I believe should have happened to her, what I believe was bad and good in this series, why I believe this series pretty much shouldn't exist, but so long as it does, we'll see where it goes.